The 8-game winning streak is over, and now the Nashville Predators host the Sabres in a game that might be one of their most important down the stretch this season. Plus, the Ryan Johansen experiment is over in Colorado. What went wrong? And dare I say, Anne, do the Predators bring him back? We'll talk about it today on Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day, each and every day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, want to start out with a special shout out to our loyal Locked On Pred heads out there, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you guys and we appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am also a writer at Penalty Box Radio.
It's deadline season, man, and apparently I missed the memo that the trade deadline was moved from this Friday to about 6 o'clock yesterday because, boy, those trades came flying in.
It was absolutely insanity. It really felt like this was it. Like if you didn't get it done today, it's not happening. And I'm like, wait, people, we have more time. Nobody panic. We have more time. But it was nothing. And then all of a sudden it was everything happening all at once. It was crazy.
Yeah. There's a couple of big ones that we're going to mention coming up on today's show and dive into a little bit, including one involving a certain former Nashville Predator. And if you believe some of the reports from the Colorado media, maybe some drama involved in the Ryan Johansen exit in Colorado. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Trade deadline stuff coming up in a second, but first, Ann, let's dive into the on-ice stuff tonight. Preds taking on the Buffalo Sabres at Bridgestone Arena. It is an important game, I think, Ann, because this is the one following Tuesday's loss, which was the Predators' first loss in 9 games.
Yeah.
The 8-game winning streak is now over, and we've seen this time and time again, Ann, where a team will go on a run, put this like great momentum together, and then one small loss, like an overtime loss, a small bit of adversity comes, and the wheels completely fall off. I think we're all kind of waiting with bated breath to see if the Predators can sort of avoid that stigma tonight at Bridgestone.
Yeah, Andrew Brunette has talked a lot recently during this 8-game, win streak that the Predators were on about the different areas that this team is really showing growth and maturity. Tonight is another one of those opportunities to show growth and maturity. He had talked about things like closing out in the third period and bouncing back after, a tough play or, a goal against and that kind of thing, understanding what it takes to win a game in this league. Now they've lost a game against a team that's out of the playoffs, for the most part. Now they're facing a Buffalo team tonight, basically out of the playoffs. You have this is a redo. Like this is almost exactly a redo opportunity for the Nashville Predators. And so this is another measuring stick of like maturity. How much does this team get? And, Brunette talked about it's really hard to maintain that high level of play. It's also difficult to get back to it once you've let it slip. So let's see what the Predators can do tonight. I love that this is the follow-up game to the Montreal game, because like I said, I feel like, Montreal and Buffalo in some ways are very, comparable situations for the Nashville Predators, both at home against teams that are kind of hungry. They've got something they want to prove. They've got nothing, YOLO. I mean, they're really out there just YOLO. So it's a good chance for the Predators to kind of regroup and do it again. Do it right this time.
And like Montreal, a lot of dangerous players
Yes.
on the Buffalo Sabres, including potentially Bowen Byram. One of the 5,000 trades that went down across the league yesterday. So conversation about some more of those coming up in a little bit. But yeah, and I think the spotlight is going to be on the response
Mhm.
from the Nashville Predators here. And you kind of mentioned it as a redo,
Yeah.
as a chance to kind of go out there and be like, okay, we've clearly gotten up for our Central Division rivals. We've clearly gotten up for some of the better teams in the league. And then, we wound up not being able to close the deal against maybe the weakest team that was on our schedule in
Mhm.
that 8-game winning streak. I think that sort of, games like that happen, of course, but I
Right.
do think a lot of people are like, yep, there's the impetus to the inevitable collapse that we always see when the Predators lose a game, kind of like that. So this is going to be, I think, the toughest test for the players, and I think this is going to be the
Mhm.
toughest test for Andrew Burnett, because what's your message in the locker room going to be? You want to make sure that you know they're focused on starting another 8-game losing
Right.
streak, and not necessarily sort of, I guess, letting the momentum that you've built over the past 3 weeks slip away just because you lost to a bad team in overtime. So,
Yeah.
I'm very interested to see what Burnett's message is going to be to the team going into this game, and I'm very interested to see how the players respond, especially early in that game, within the
Mhm.
first, in the first period, the first couple minutes of the second period. Really interested to see the energy Nashville brings here.
It was interesting, kind of getting a read on the vibe after that loss too, in the locker room and with Andrew Brunette on Tuesday night, because you kind of expected to go in the locker room and have the players just be full of angst over it. Or would they be like, what do you know? We lost, And it was such a good kind of measured response from the players that we got an opportunity to talk to, like disappointed, very disappointed that they didn't perform up to standard, but also measured, like not it wasn't like all of the air had gone out of the balloon, and Andrew Brunette, kind of the same thing. He talked about, yeah, it wasn't standard. That's not the standard that we set over this 8-game win streak in a number of areas, but also balanced. Like, hey, there were some really good things we did. The penalty kill was excellent, especially at the end of the third period, to really get the Predators that one valuable point. They killed it off in overtime, 2 seconds later. Thank you, Nick Suzuki. But, he was like, there were some good things that really happened in that game. And so the response Tuesday night felt more measured than I think we've seen from the Predators after a tough loss or after kind of a disappointing, frustrating game. So let's see if that carries over into how they play tonight against Buffalo. I'm very interested. I'm very interested to see how this game goes. And I think we're going to learn more about who this Predators team tonight against Buffalo, more so than we even did when they faced Colorado on Saturday night. Like, I think this is going to tell us a lot about this team and how much do they understand about what it takes to win, and how do you get back to that. So it's just, I think tonight's a big game. Tonight is a big game against the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind is Buffalo played last night, an overtime
Yeah.
loss against Toronto. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who's been their starter all
Yeah.
season, played last night. So we're probably going to see Eric Comrie tonight for the
Mhm.
Sabres, who has not been good in the 8 games that he's appeared in this year. So, this is an opportunity for Nashville. They're licking their chops playing a tired team, a team with a not very good backup goalie. And, quite frankly, and to put it bluntly, I don't think there is any excuse for the Preds to drop this game tonight. If they come
Absolutely.
out and get outplayed, that is a damning indictment on the mindset of this locker room right
Yeah.
now. So hopefully we won't have to cross that bridge when
Let's
we
hope
get
not.
there.
Let's hope
Speaking of damning indictment, Ryan Johansen traded and then put on waivers in the span of about 15 minutes yesterday. We're learning a little bit more from the Colorado media about how that all went down, and it doesn't necessarily paint a great picture of Ryan Johansen's tenure in Colorado. So we're going to dive into that nonsense coming up here in just 1 second. First, though, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Hockey season, it's winding down. Who knows if there's going to be playoff tickets available, but hey, Nashville SC, they're still going strong. We got a lot of Nashville Sounds game. If you're listening from elsewhere, baseball is going on. Plus, it's summer, so that means there's concerts and theater shows and all kinds of fun stuff to look forward to. The point is, there's going to be a lot of tickets to a lot of different things up for grabs, and you're going to need the GameTime app to score the best deals on the best seats. The GameTime app is the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. They have great features like a all-in pricing that shows you your price up front so you don't get slammed with hidden fees. They have last-minute tickets and flash deals on stuff like football, basketball, hockey, baseball, concerts, theater, and much, much more. And the best part, you know that you're getting the best deal because they have the GameTime guarantee. If you find tickets in the same seat or same section and row for less than you find on GameTime, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Ann, it is time to dive into the Ryan Johansen drama in Colorado.
Man.
So for those of you who didn't see it yesterday, basically Ryan Johansen was traded from the Colorado Avalanche along with a first-round pick in exchange for Sean Walker from the Philadelphia Flyers, a very good depth defenseman, and another late-round draft pick for the Philadelphia Flyers. So Ryan Johansen then goes to Philly, and it is immediately put on waivers. And it seems like it is going to be either a team claims him or he is going to be playing for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms for the rest of the year. And your first reaction to the Ryan Johansen news coming out of Colorado?
My first reaction was I have to come onto the podcast and I have to say I was wrong. Because if you remember, I really wanted Ryan Johansen to stay because I felt like at the end of last season, after he was injured, after he sat out and watched these young guys come in and battle for a playoff spot, which I mean, ultimately they didn't get, but man, did those young players come in hungry. I felt like Ryan Johansen needs a chance. And then, you see he heads to Colorado and I'm thinking, you know what? He's been called out by Barry Trotz by name at the end of the season for maybe being a step behind. Barry Trotz retained salary and to trade Ryan Johansen to move him off of the Nashville Predators team and not a part of this future core. He goes to a cup contending team and, is going to allegedly play a lot of minutes with Val Nichushkin. And I'm like, y'all, he's going to pop off. Ryan Johansen is going to have an incredible year. Well, yeah, okay, I was wrong. Yeah, okay, I was wrong.
He did pop off for a little bit.
But
hot start to the year.
Man, the infatuation soured really quickly with Ryan Johansen. And now I do want to say we haven't heard Ryan Johansen's side of the story. So it'll be interesting eventually at some juncture to find out really kind of what happened. But this is not at all how I anticipated Ryan Johansen's tenure in Colorado going at all.
It's Adrian Dater in Colorado, which I'm sure everybody kind of has an opinion on him. But at least what he is saying, and it seems to be backed up by maybe a couple other people coming out of Colorado, was that basically the Avs core players had some friction of some sort with Ryan Johansen that really reached ahead over the past, over the past couple of weeks, and Colorado felt it would be best to just kind of cut their losses there. So there is, that aspect and of, there might be some behind the scenes drama. And as Alex Doherty pointed out today, would be the second time in 10 months that he had been traded for reasons not really directly
Yes.
related to his play.
Yes.
But it's also, Ryan Johansen hasn't exactly been playing that great this season
Mhm.
either. He did get off to that hot start. But as you mentioned, just 23 points in 63 games this year, 13 goals, 10 assists. His ice time had kind of been cut. That had been a
Right.
hot topic of discussion among Colorado fans recently, was that it seems like his role had slowly started to drop. We know that Colorado, we saw it in the Casey Middlestat trade yesterday,
Mhm.
have kind of been looking for other forward options that could kind of play that second line center role. So it seemed like the writing was really on the wall there, that they weren't really thrilled with Ryan Johansen. And, the off the ice reasons, people have speculated about stuff similar in Nashville. Now there's stuff coming out in Colorado. That's fine, and maybe we'll get more on that. Maybe we'll get Johansen's side of the story someday. But just from an on ice perspective, like if we just look at this from the on ice perspective, Barry Trotz said it last year. Ryan Johansen coming off a difficult injury,
Mhm.
one that's really hard to come back from, and his style of play, the type of game in which he plays, maybe doesn't fit in a top line situation in which speed and
Yes.
quickness and agility and being able to make snap decisions is kind of a premium. And
Yeah.
so you look at that, you look at Johansen's game, and but it's I'm sure there's going to be a team taking a flyer on him, like at some point, whether he gets claimed by a team on waivers, whether Philly, trades him or releases him or something like that.
Mhm.
But it's also, yeah, I mean, the peak season of Ryan Johansen maybe being considered, kind of a top six gem, is probably over.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that it was as brief as it was because, you and I've talked about postseason Ryan Johansson is a different guy than regular season Ryan Johansson, and it looks like Colorado was like, "We aren't banking on that." Like, they didn't even take him to the postseason to see that. It's very interesting. It's very interesting to me how short this term was with Colorado because it seemed like he was going to be a good addition, and it seemed like it was gonna be a great opportunity for somebody who I can't imagine wasn't highly motivated to,
Yeah,
in his own way, say I'm trying to think of, like, how I can say it on the pocket to say
I'm gonna kick that team's
I'm
ass
gonna
and
kick
prove
that team's
everybody wrong.
ass because of what Barry Trotz said about me, because they traded me and they traded me and wanted me gone so much, they continue to pay me not to play there. And, they are fine that I went to a Central Division rival. You would think that there would be so much motivation. I have to tell you, like, didn't see this coming. Now,
Yeah.
for the people who are like, "Hey, Barry. Hey, Barry, Ryan Johansen's out there. What is your response, Nick?"
So it started as a joke.
Did
Like
it
a lot of
though?
people were like, "Yeah, like Ryan Johansen. How funny would it be if Barry Trotz brought him back?" And then it kind of like there started being one or two people that were like, "Well, if Nashville's paying the salary anyway, and they do need a forward, and they could use some depth and a person familiar with the core," and to me, I'm just like, just stop, just stop right there. Barry Trotz isn't going to just rail against a player for being not a fit in the system. Watch him be an even worse fit in a good team system, and then be like, you know what, we could use him in the locker room.
Yeah.
There is zero chance
Yeah.
that Ryan Johansen ever comes back to Nashville.
I think it's so interesting too. First of all, it's like inviting your ex-girlfriend to your wedding. It's just one of those things you just don't do. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
you just don't do it. But also, if you look and listen to the conversations that Trotz has, that Andrew Burnett has, that the players have about the state of the Nashville Predators locker room right now, it's a really healthy locker room.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Ryan Johansen was all of the problem or all of a problem or anything like that. Barry Trotz is going to be extraordinarily careful who he brings into this locker room. It doesn't matter what position, doesn't matter what the deal is. Barry Trotz is going to be extremely careful who he brings into this locker room, and it's not going to be Ryan Johansen.
No. Yeah, I think we can put the burners on that one.
Yeah.
That trade was not the only one that went down yesterday, and there is a lot of crazy trades involving teams from the Western Conference, including some that the Preds are going to be playing a few times this year. What do we make of them? And do we expect any more in the coming days? We'll talk about that coming up in just 1 second.
First, want to let you know this episode is brought to you by Factor. If you are like me, one of your New Year's resolutions may have been eating healthier, but it is March. And if you are at all like me, you may be feeling overwhelmed or under inspired. Well, let me introduce you to Factor meals. Factor makes delicious, ready to eat meals that are ready to go in just 2 minutes. Their fresh, never frozen meals are chef created and dietitian approved. They have over 35 different options to choose from, including Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor also has more than 60 add-ons to help you stay fueled up and feeling good all day long. You can discover a wide variety of options for the entire day, including smoothies, pancakes, and midday snacks. And with Factor, there is no prep, no mess, no cleanup. Factor meals are ready to heat and eat. Factor's the perfect solution if you are looking for fast, premium options with no cooking required. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 and use code LockedOnNHL50 to get 50% off. Again, check them out at factormeals.com and use our code LockedOnNHL50 for 50% off. That's factormeals.com.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is only good through April 30th, so get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. All right, Ann, trade deadline chaos happening across the NHL. We talked about the Ryan Johansen / Sean Walker deal, which goes to Colorado. Gives Colorado another really good depth defenseman. I thought Sean Walker, very underrated as a player. Not only that, but Bowen Byram out of Colorado. And Casey Middlestat from the Buffalo Sabres. Nice forward prospect there, comes back to Colorado. Seems like a guy who's going to sort of be that go-to anchor in the middle six of that lineup. So, and Colorado going aggressive with 2 big moves to kind of shore up their roster and focus on getting some more offense in.
Yeah, I really like these moves for Colorado. I mean, I like them for Colorado. I don't like them for Nashville, who has to deal with Colorado in the Central Division. But these are pretty smart moves. I think Casey Middlestat is going to be really interesting in Colorado. Like you said, kind of in that sort of middle six mix. Don't know that he's necessarily going to be the guy and all for Colorado, but I think he'll be a really good addition. You may not see it right away this year. Let's see what happens with him. Like that move. Bo Byram going to the Sabres, which means he's going to come back for a little more Tommy Novak in the slot tonight. We'll see what happens. When I saw that Bo and Byram was traded, my first thought was like, Tommy Novak broke him in the Montreal was it Montreal? No, the Colorado game on Saturday. I'm like, Tommy Novak broke him. But yeah, Colorado's making some moves. Like they're serious about this. I'm curious to see how confident they feel in their goaltending. It seems like Colorado, they've been up and down about Georgiev. I'm like, okay, are they feeling like, you know what, if we get a little better on the front end, we're not going to worry so much about that. So we'll see if they're done or not.
Yeah. I can see them making another one big move because it seems like, with Val Nichushkin coming out of the player assistance program, which very good to see him back. And keep in mind, and there's also been some chitter chatter about Gabe Landeskog coming back into the fold as well. So, those are whatever Colorado does in terms of trades. Those are also two big additions for the Avs down the stretch. The other team they might be competing against in terms of being a favorite in the West is the Vegas Golden Knights, who all of a sudden now have Anthony Mantha on the roster. And it also seems like they are going to get Noah Hannafin.
Can you believe that?
Calgary Flames.
Yeah.
So that's another big swing for the Golden Knights, who apparently have cap space somewhere.
Okay, I want to get your take on that. How do you feel about this? Because there are people who are really squawking about, what Vegas, they are working the system. They are abusing the CBA and the way that this is all supposed to work. And then there are other people who are like, hey, if they're doing it, why isn't your GM doing it too? What do you think about what Vegas is doing?
I mean, it's also what Tampa kind of did it notoriously a couple years earlier.
Yeah.
So look, if the NHL's not going to enforce it, then why not?
Why not?
Like I think like there's going to be like some like Alec Martinez is going to take like a wrist shot off the side of the foot and it's going to bruise his foot, and there's just going to be two trainers with giant baseball bats back there waiting to just break a couple of bones.
Yes.
You're like, that's a break, right?
That
seems like when's the playoffs? Yeah, it seems like a month and a half recovery time, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, but I mean, hey, like this is like one of those things that came up during like the Michigan sign stealing scandal over this past year, where all the Big Ten coaches were like clutching pearls. And then you talk to like people from other programs around the country and they're like, oh yeah, that's of course they would do that if they could.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like, hey, brainstorm, like show some initiative, NHL teams.
Yeah. When you look at, trades that haven't happened yet, looking at the Nashville Predators roster, who do you think, we've got a little bit of time left. Do you think we're going to see somebody moved? And if so, what's your best guess?
The one that still stands to me is I think the Predators are going to get rid of a defenseman.
Yeah.
Because I really think they think Spencer Stastny is NHL ready now. And I think they would really love to see him get some possibly even top 4 minutes if they can. So I seems like Carrier is going to be the best option. It really seems like there may be a team out there based on what we've seen so far, maybe willing to give up a first round pick, depending on what the deal is. Maybe if some salary comes back the other way to Nashville. That's my guess, but I have to wonder if maybe the Preds aren't going to also find a way to try to move Dante Fabro
Yeah.
instead, and maybe see if they can sign Carrier to a longer term
Yeah.
extension. Because
I
I
can
think
see
if
that.
they had the pick between those two, I think they would pick Carrier. I think the only issue between them is that Fabro's an RFA. They have control on him. Carrier's unrestricted free agent. You don't want to lose him for nothing. So I think that might be the only reason
Yeah.
that you see Carrier going instead of Fabro.
Yeah. I am so surprised that we have not heard any chatter about Kevin Lankinen. If you are
Yeah,
a playoff team and you're like, "Hey, we've got a good goaltender and then we got another guy," why are you not calling about Kevin Lankinen? Now look, I love him. I love Kevin Lankinen. Um, but I'm telling you, like, I can't figure out why there just hasn't been more chatter about a team going, "We really want to get a step better for the playoffs in net." Kevin Lankinen is your guy. And I don't know if people are scared off by just looking at the paper, the stats on paper, but if you really look at Kevin Lankinen's games, who he's gotten his starts against and all of that stuff, I'm just shocked that something hasn't happened with Lankinen. And again, love him. I hate this time of year. This is my least favorite thing about hockey is all of this, and parting is such sweet sorrow and all that stuff. But I can't believe Kevin Lankinen hasn't been mentioned. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. One day more,
yeah,
as they say in Les Mis.
yeah. One day more. With Lankinen, obviously there's a lot of scuttlebutt about Jacob Markstrom in Calgary right now, and a lot of people
Right.
think he's linked to New Jersey. And I wouldn't be surprised if when that is over, if there's some other teams that might just look for goaltending depth. A team like Toronto, who I
Yes.
don't know if they're really content with their situation right now. A team like LA, who maybe needs somebody behind Cam Talbot. So it wouldn't surprise me if maybe the market around Lankinen picked up here down the stretch. It also wouldn't surprise me if the Preds just say, you know what, screw it. We'd rather have Askarov finish the year in Milwaukee.
Right.
So,
No harm in that. No
yeah.
harm in that.
So Preds have options. It should be pretty interesting to see how they
Yeah.
handle this trade deadline.
Yeah.
We are going to be talking more hockey tomorrow. Preds, of course, take on the Buffalo Sabres. So we'll have a full recap of that game. Plus, it's deadline day, folks. Predators have a lot of stuff that they could do. What will they actually do? We'll talk about that on tomorrow's Locked on Predators podcast. And where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at Penalty Box Radio. You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at Penalty Box Radio as well. Follow me on social media at _NS Morgan. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked on Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Back tomorrow with an all new episode. We'll see you then.